One of the 6 premiers who signed that letter to the Prime Minister is New Brunswick Conservative Premier Blaine Higgs. Premier Higgs joins me now from Fredericton. Premier Higgs, thanks for joining us now.
Good afternoon. It's good to be here.
Okay, let's start. You have heard what the Prime Minister had to say today in question period and going into question period. He suggested that the 6 premiers, his 6 premiers who signed this letter, are playing politics. He says you're playing games. And he says that if you're saying that federal legislation is causing a national unity crisis, he says it's you who are causing the national unity crisis with your language. How do you respond?
Well, it's unfortunate that he's being dismissive of the concerns of 6 premiers that have taken the initiative to voice them, not only publicly but very specifically on a bill that is going to be potentially so detrimental, certainly detrimental in its current format, and if the Senate recommendations aren't adopted in their fullness, or certainly very near so, then we're basically signing off on the resources we have and the ability to get those resources to market. And our economy cannot stand to have more private sector dollars just exit and go elsewhere. We are in a transition economy right now, in my view, and that economy is to shift over time from our resource base, which has made our country strong and economically viable and provided the economy for our services that we have from all across our nation, as we shift into a greener economy. And it's a process. And using the resources while we have them or while we need them, our own resources, it only makes sense.
Okay,
and
so
we're at a critical juncture right now with this Bill C-69 on the table. Okay,
so in the case of Bill C-69, is your bottom line then that every one of the 188 Senate amendments plus sub-amendments must be accepted by the government for it to be palatable to you?
Well, I think that, I listened to the minister earlier talking about, well, there were a couple there they were interested in, but, it's a lot deeper than that. So does everyone have to be accepted? I guess it wouldn't be fair to say everyone, but I think we're talking a serious majority of the recommendations, or they wouldn't be there. The Senate did, I think, above and beyond in their approach to this, in their quest across the nation to get answers and understand it. And for any bill to get, I think it's 180 recommendations, I would say that you really can't dismiss any of them and need to look at every one of them in its entirety.
Okay, what about when the parliamentary secretary suggests, and we're hearing the same suggestion from the government, that a lot of the 188, the sum total of the 188 amendments is really to almost gut the bill. They're saying they get to the heart of things like standing, of who can actually have standing, time frames for environmental reviews, the power of the minister. They're saying it changes the bill so much, they're not going to be able to accept some of those changes.
I guess then that tells just how flawed the bill is. Because any bill that would go to the Senate and require this sort of modification, would only indicate that it was severely flawed to begin with, and was not well thought out to begin with, and now it has a serious opportunity to get it right. And so I would say that just tells really how bad it was.
What about when there's
the Senate have done their work?
Okay, you're probably aware of this open letter now that's been signed by I think about 50 environmental law professors and specialists saying that the changes are so significant that they would basically gut the bill. What do you say to them?
Well, I would say that let's look at that. If there's concerns in that regard, because I think every one of us that have signed this concern letter in saying these amendments need to be adopted is based on us providing an economy that's going to thrive and survive to pay for the services across this country. So there's a balance here, and I've heard the balance between, and they try to make it between that it's not all environment, it's not all economy. It has to be a balance. Although the government will talk about that, this isn't balanced. And the concern is it's real. From the people that are investing in our country, we've seen $100 billion exit investment from our resource-based industries. I mean, those industries have been paying the bills, and we're still using those industries. At this point in time, our opportunity exists for us to transition, not just flick a switch and shut off what has been causing our economy to survive and our nation to be strong. But there's a process, and we're in it. And right now, that's the goal, is let's have this be a transition. And so I would say that there's a balance, and right now that balance has not been struck.
Okay, what if tomorrow we see the response from the from the government, and it would be tabled in the House of Commons, and then it would be sent back to the Senate? What if they reject most of the major amendments you'd like to see? So basically, and then this is sent to the Senate defers and says, okay, the elected House of Commons has made its decision. The government has made its decision. Will you be campaigning on this out in the sticks in the fall?
Well, obviously, waiting to see what is adopted is important. Getting our letter in advance of it coming for final approval was critical, so that we know that like 60% of the premiers representing 60% of the population are not in favor of this without these amendments. I would say that if it doesn't get changed in a way that allows us to continue to provide an economic base for our future, as well as we move forward to a transition into a different renewable energy, I think that we would have to fight against this in the next election. Because what are our options at that point if 60% of the population is being ignored by Ottawa?
Okay, last question, and it's connected, but it's a bit different. And that is, you were in Toronto, we were meeting with Premier Ford, and we're talking about the next election, and we're talking about possibly campaigning. We did see last week in Toronto, Conservatives in Ontario hesitant about having Doug Ford, Conservative Premier, campaigning alongside Andrew Scheer in the federal election. Are you planning to help out Andrew Scheer in the next election, campaign with him?
Well, I guess my point in New Brunswick is my goal is to support, certainly the party that's putting forward the positions that I agree with. So, if we're saying that this bill doesn't get amended and it's still out there and it has the potential to be canceled with the new government, then I guess I would support the government that wants to change it or to get rid of it. The carbon tax, we're not supporting a carbon tax because we are 98% of our way into Brunswick right now without a carbon tax to meeting our missions for 2030. I don't need to tax people more to meet our mission standards, which we are committed to do so. So if a party is running on the basis of ideas that are going to cause our country and our economy to grow and thrive, then I guess I would be supporting that party. So we'll see where that ends up. But I guess the odds are pretty clear about who that might be.
Okay, last question. When we know that Premier Kenny from Alberta is going to be in Montreal tomorrow, and he's going to be meeting with Quebec Premier François Legault, we know that one of the things he wants to talk about is this idea of an Energy East type pipeline, renewing it. We know that that's an idea that's very dear to you. Do you have any plans to try and persuade Quebec Premier François Legault to?
I do indeed, and I've had recent discussions with Premier Legault, and I know his position. I mean, he's been clear. I also know that in the whole concept of an energy corridor through our country, we need to have certainty about getting resources from one coast to another, and that's important. And Premier Legault, I'm hopeful he will play a role in that. He wants to establish a gas pipeline through Quebec to let's say look at a new LNG export facility along the St. Lawrence Seaway. I mean, we are a stranded asset here in New Brunswick. We don't have access to these resources because it stops in Quebec. That's in our nation. That's just not fair. I mean, I'm not looking for handouts here. I'm looking to build our economy, and I'm looking to use the resources that are available from other provinces to do that. And it's not fair for a province to say, well, I don't agree with that. I'm not interested, because they're transporting this oil through their province on rail cars or up the St. Lawrence Seaway in ships. So I'm hopeful we can continue the discussions, and I want to work with every premier, and that obviously includes Premier Legault, because we need Quebec, we need other provinces to help join in continuing our nation and making it to be as strong as it possibly can be.
Okay, Premier Blaine Higgs, thank you very much for taking the time, and we will speak again. Thanks for speaking with us.
You're very welcome. Have a good day.